Hey guys, I'm live. I'm so sorry about my glasses. They're reflecting blue, but I can't help that. And my contacts are bothering me today, so I have to wear glasses. So they have like a blue, I get my glasses with a blue blocking reflector. Hey girly. Hey guys, I'm just waiting for everyone to join. I was just saying, like, sorry, my glasses are reflecting blue. I get my, like, eyeglasses with blue light reflectant in them and to just block blue light. And my contacts are bothering me today, so I gotta wear my glasses. But, yeah, so I'm just gonna have, like, robot blue eyes. But I'm excited that you guys are here. Thanks for spending your Friday morning with me. This is just open for a Q&A, so you guys can ask whatever questions you want. And yeah, I might chat about a few things that, I always read research studies. Like, I'm the type of person that, like, during the day I'm working and then during the night I'm researching. So I've actually read quite a few interesting research studies yesterday that are new and just came out. It's very exciting stuff. Okay, so Kristen asks, hi Jessica, can supplementing with progesterone cream make it harder to lose weight? Not necessarily. However, you guys remember, I constantly talk about this because a lot of people are not aware that progesterone mobilizes estrogen from your tissues. So remember, your bloodstream is not the storage place for hormones. It is the highway for hormones. And when we have enough progesterone, our body begins to properly detoxify estrogen, partially by pulling it from the tissues. Remember that progesterone helps you lose weight. Estrogen is a fat storing hormone. Remember, it used to be called adipin when they used to feed it to cattle to fatten them up because it's directly anti-thyroid or anti-metabolism. And so when you start progesterone cream or bioidentical progesterone, you are mobilizing estrogen from your tissues. This can take months, this can take years, but guess what happened? It's stored there because you had low progesterone for so long, and so it needs to occur. And so sometimes when estrogen is first detoxifying from the tissues, if you're not getting it out of the body properly, it can increase fat storage or make you have a weight loss plateau. So it's kind of one of those things where, do you want to heal your body or do you want to lose weight? Do you want estrogen to be stored in your tissues? Hell nah, right? Like, that's a cancer causing compound, inflammatory. It's going to make you have gut issues. So you gotta just do the work and get it out. But yeah, I could totally plateau your weight loss. However, it's pro-thyroid. And so as you get estrogen out of your system, you'll begin to actually see that your body is burning glucose better, that your thyroid's working better. And so overall, increasing progesterone will be beneficial, and getting that estrogen out of your body will be beneficial long term. But that's why a lot of women do experience, when they first implement like progesterone or bioidentical progesterone, they get almost estrogen dominance like symptoms, even women who have tested previously for low estrogen. And I am telling you, most women do not have low estrogen, even if it comes back on a test that you have low estrogen. Why? Because you need adequate levels of progesterone to accurately see how much estrogen is actually in the body and pulling it out and mobilizing. I hope that makes sense, you guys. I try to take the science and break it down as easy to understand as possible, but at the same time, I don't want to dumb it down so much that you guys don't understand your bodies. I know you guys are smart. You guys are, hungry for healing, and so I'm not going to dumb it down to the point where you don't get it. You know what I mean? So there's a fine line, and I throw information at you, and sometimes it's going to be a lot, but process it. Remember, think, perceive, act. Your goal is, if you truly want to heal your body long term and not be a slave to the system or be a slave to other people making decisions for your body, then it does take experimentation. It does take observation. It does take learning and knowledge and education. And that doesn't mean you're going to constantly be learning. Health is a journey. And unfortunately, we live in this world where we constantly have to be advocates for our own health, not only, because of Western medicine, but also because we live in such a world that's so stressful on the human body. You know what I mean? The stressors are not going away. And so we have to learn to become more resilient to those stressors. Hi Jess, I think I'm allergic to raw carrots because I feel itchy after. Can I still get great benefits from cooked carrots? So you are experiencing itchiness, right? And what causes itchiness? Oh, hello, histamine. And guess what? Carrots do bind to histamine as well. And so if you are getting actually itchiness, it can actually be that carrot is killing things in your gut. A lot of people actually experience, remember that a raw carrot actually acts almost like a natural antibiotic. If you've ever set a carrot out on the counter or something like that, it doesn't really rot, right? It doesn't like get fungus on it or moldy. It just kind of shrivels up and doesn't rot ever. And that's because it's so powerfully antibacterial and antifungal. And we want that same thing happening in our gut, right? And so a lot of times when women are having reactions to a raw carrot, they are the ones that need it the most. However, if it's so uncomfortable or you can't handle it, then maybe try doing, mushrooms, well-cooked mushrooms instead, to see if you tolerate that better. However, I think that sometimes when you have a bad reaction to raw carrots at first, you can see that they're actually working. But that's kind of up to you. I'm not saying like keep doing something that is uncomfortable to you. However, it's one of those things where if it's causing you to get better, even though like your symptoms get worse for a temporary period of time, that could mean healing. I'm a virgin and I want to have sex but will not use birth control. How can I protect myself having sex in a natural way? That's a great question. So I want you guys to understand first, and this is, not a very popular point of view, but again, I'm looking at science. I actually read a research paper yesterday that was talking about how semen does bond a woman to a man. You have to understand, on a hormonal level, semen almost imprints you to someone. And pheromones are shared, hormones are shared, and dopamine levels increase. And so I always say, women, just be very careful with who gets access to your vagina, for both health reasons and for hormonal reasons. And it can actually really affect us emotionally and mentally. This is why breakups are so difficult. On top of just being an emotional stressor, it is a physical stressor. And it's just science, it's just biology. And I don't mean that, women don't have freedom to do what they want. Of course, do what you deem is proper for your body, but just hold your vagina as sacred and understand that is both a mental, an emotional, and a physical protectant. However, if you are, with someone that is going to take care of you and respects your body and loves you and respects the mind that goes along with it and sees you for what you are, the goddess that you are, then, that is your choice to share that with somebody. And to be safe, you do want to be tracking your cycles for sure. And you kind of have to look into the fertility awareness method for yourself, what you deem is appropriate for you. So, for example, your fertile window is when, remember that sperm can last in the body for 5 to 6 days. And then when you drop an egg, that egg can be fertilized for 24 to 48 hours. Usually it's around 24 hours, but I just say treat it like 48 hours just to be safe. And so if sperm is present when you drop that egg, it can get fertilized. And so that is why your fertile window is about 5 to 7 days, that time leading up to ovulation and then during ovulation. And so you don't want sperm anywhere near you unless you want to get pregnant during that time. And so some people during that time will use condoms. Some people will abstain altogether. Some people will go above and beyond and use spermicide, which I'm not necessarily an advocate for. I don't think you should be shooting chemicals up your vagina ever, but it's kind of, I guess, your choice and what makes you feel safe. Some people will use a diaphragm. It kind of is just what you are safe with. It really depends on your partner, right? Because it's like if you are in a long-term relationship or you're married to someone and you don't mind if a baby happens, or you'll deal with it, then you're probably going to be a little bit less careful than someone that really needs to be careful. Condoms are a great option. I would probably recommend your first time be not during your fertile window, just so that you are don't have to worry about it. You know what I mean? And so that does take tracking your cycles, understanding your cycles, kind of doing the fertility awareness method. But you know what? It's one of those things where I know it's kind of like that Mean Girls things where don't have sex or you'll get pregnant and die. And it's that is the worst kind of education that women have gotten, because we think we can get pregnant at all times of the month and like, it's always the risk on us. But you do need to have a partner that is on board if you're not going to use, if you're using natural forms of birth control, because it is, an honoring and a respect of your own body, and they have to also honor and respect your own body. If they are not on board with keeping their semen away from you, then then they don't belong in your body. You know what I mean? So you got to make sure that you are you understand your body, you know what's going on, and you are being extra careful. But condoms are usually pretty effective. However, you need to use the birth control that is best for you. You know what I mean? It's kind of one of those things where you need to decide what is best for your body and your situation and your season of life, and there's no right or wrong in that situation at all. But I hope that was helpful. I tried to there's no right or wrong. I want you guys to know that what you do with your body is really your own prerogative. I just like to remind you of the science and remind you of what's going on, and just be confident and understanding your body before you go ahead and do that. But congratulations. How long would you think it takes for hirsutism to disappear naturally once your diet and body are in balance? So with these questions, you guys, whenever you ask how long is something, I really don't think that that's going to do you any good. It's really not, because okay, I tell you 6 months, and then 6 months goes along and it's not working. So what are you going to do? Are you going to change what you're doing? Is it going to change how you're treating your body? Are you just going to give up and say, well, this isn't working, so I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to change to a different diet because it's not working? You have to really change your health habits with zero expectation. Honestly, honest to God. And I know we have symptoms that we want to change, and I know that we have weight loss we want to achieve, but the body does this in its own due time. And if you truly desire healing, you need to give your body the tools and the environment and the space to heal. And regardless of how much time it takes, continue to do the work. Understand that your body deserves nothing less. You know what I mean? It takes us a very long time to get it to a state of imbalance and disease. And so why do we expect it to be like a snap of the fingers to get back to a state of health? Sometimes our disease and our hormonal imbalances are a lifetime of bad habits building up. And so, if it takes years to get back to that, to that, childhood energy or that childhood healing or that place where our metabolism is functioning optimally, then, are you going to just give up because it's going to take years, or are you just going to do the work anyways? Because what else are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like, what else is there? Just to give up and be like, screw it all, and just keep going in the wrong direction, or shift that heavy boat, turn it around, and start going back in the right direction. And so I really don't recommend placing expectations on healing. I recommend giving your body the time, the space, the environment that it needs, and letting it do its thing. I honestly, honest to God, got to the point where I said, if nothing changes, at least I'm treating my body well, and I'm making up for the time that I didn't treat my body the way that it deserved. And over time, slowly, I saw my hirsutism get better. I saw my hair loss slow. I saw my skin clear up. I saw my weight improve. But that was over the course of 4 or 5 years. I wasn't constantly checking my hair okay, is it a little thinner? Is it a little thicker? Because it just drives stress, and it just drives it's a very bad mental state to be in. Turn that energy into when am I going to heal? When am I going to heal? And being hard on your body. Turn that energy into how I'm going to continue to improve and continue to grow as both a person and on a physical level and a health level. And just keep doing the work day after day. Take it day by day by day. And over time, you'll see the body slowly and gradually improve. I know that's probably not the answer to the question that you want, but it's very important. I did an OGT test and it was fine, but my fasting insulin was increased. Does this mean I have insulin resistance? I'm looking for the cause of my PCOS. So, you guys, PCOS is always caused by a multitude of factors. I think people are getting really confused. This is why I'm going to take this blog post down off my website and really stop talking about the types of PCOS, because I think people are getting so concerned with what type of PCOS you have, what's driving it. And I'm it's usually all the issues together driving it. So estrogen dominance and progesterone deficiency drive insulin resistance. Stress that's high suppresses the thyroid and drives insulin resistance. So insulin issues, thyroid issues, adrenal or stress issues, and then estrogen and progesterone issues are all going to drive PCOS symptoms, in addition to gut issues or toxins coming from the gut. And testosterone and DHEA, you guys have to see it for what it is. Your body uses DHEA and testosterone to protect your tissues from stress. This is why your heart tissue, your brain tissue, your lung tissue is the most concentrated in testosterone. It's to protect your body from breaking down those vital organs when cortisol and adrenaline are high. And so when testosterone and DHEA are high, you need to see it for what it is. It's a biological response to protect you from cortisol, adrenaline, estrogen. And so, the body's really wise, remember? And when we start to mess with the body or try to manually lower testosterone levels, we end up actually doing more harm than good. We need to see it for what it is. It's an estrogen dominance issue, a lack of progesterone or low progesterone. There's inflammation occurring from both the estrogen and the gut issues. And then we also have stress driving metabolic function down. And all of that combined is going to cause insulin resistance, or your cell's inability to respond to insulin properly. And this will actually increase insulin, because what's going to happen? Your body's like, okay, you're not responding to insulin. I'm going to make more insulin so that you can actually allow that glucose into the cell. So I hope that makes sense. But PCOS is driven by multitude of issues. They very many times are woven into each other, and you kind of need to not focus on that so much as focus on what the goal is, which is, why is this happening? Probably gut issues, liver issues, low progesterone, high estrogen, stress, and inflammation. I have found I can eat Greek yogurt without any digestive issues, but straight milk gives me many issues, especially the A2 milk, which is said to be better. Why is this? I think that, people really get caught up in all the details, and it's kind of one of those things where your body is just inflamed, and not processing dairy is just a sign of inflammation and irritation, and probably not the proper hormones. And so, everybody's a little different with how they break down dairy, what dairy products end up working, especially when they tie them back in. It's one of those things where your ability to tolerate dairy should increase with healing. So as you heal your body over time, you should begin to tolerate more foods, because partially, remember that stress drives our immunity down, and when we're under chronic stress, our food sensitivities will continue to rise, autoimmunity will continue to rise, our ability to tolerate foods will begin or will decrease. And so the goal is to really just continue to work on stress and get your body tolerating foods again. However, a lot of people, when they go and tie back in foods that they haven't consumed for a long time, make a huge mistake of just flooding the body with those foods. It's like, okay, dairy is good for me. They chug a big glass of milk, and I'm like, whoa. You've got to start very, 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 very small. And sometimes cow's milk is just too harsh on the body for the time being. And so goat's milk or sheep's milk tends to be tolerated a little bit better. So just try those, because they are more that A1 or A2. And if that still bothers you, then maybe try different brands of milk. Sometimes ultra pasteurized milk, as long as it's not homogenized. You always want non-homogenized milk, because the homogenization really makes it difficult to digest for the body. So, sometimes ultra pasteurized can be better tolerated, because the bacteria in the milk is actually what's causing the issues. And even in pasteurized milk, you still do have bacteria coming through. And so sometimes the bacteria is really, it's almost like taking probiotics that are really wreaking havoc. Milk has very powerful bacteria that really changes the gut microbiome for the better. However, if you have really messed up gut bacteria, it would just be like taking a huge, handful of probiotics. It would really wreck, your body would be like, what the heck? And it's the same thing. And so, when you go to tie dairy back in, it does take you being very, 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 very conservative with it at first, allowing your body to tolerate it, almost taking a small shot glass sometimes, and just letting that be enough for a while. until your body actually builds up its strength and immunity and its ability to digest as you're eliminating intestinal irritation. But if time goes on, months and months and months, and you're still not tolerating dairy, there's some irritation still going on. Something that you're eating, you're maybe eating too many raw leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, fibrous foods wreck the gut walls. Only robust digestive systems can handle excessive amounts of fiber and excessive amounts of raw, especially raw fibers, raw like greens and raw cruciferous vegetables. So, it's just one of those things where you have to work on it, experiment it with yourself, and, keep experimenting until you find what works. But it's just, any type of irritation when it comes to dairy is just like a severe imbalance, and there's probably still some severe irritation going on. Wow, amazing for the carrot question. Thank you so much. You're welcome, you guys. Sometimes symptoms do not always mean a bad thing. Remember, symptom-suppressing diets will immediately make you feel good, meaning they are not fixing the issue. They are just removing something that's irritating the issue, if that makes sense. And so sometimes healing diets or things that are actually doing healing work can make you feel way worse before they make you feel better. Because at the end of the day, when we actually actively lower stress hormones, specifically cortisol and adrenaline, we immediately feel more inflamed, we feel more fatigued, we have achier joints, because cortisol is naturally anti-inflammatory. That does not mean it's a good thing. It means that when you're running from an angry bear and you step on a thorn and it pierces through your foot, you have to keep running, right? And so it would make sense for the body to pump out a hormone that completely erases that pain until the stressor has passed. And it's the same thing with your body. Chronic inflammation stemming from the gut, which raises stress hormones, can make you temporarily feel better, or you're overly stimulated, or you have this overly stimulated energy. This is what happens with keto. This is what happens with starvation diets. You're like, oh, I feel really good, until 8 weeks later you feel like trash. And it's because cortisol was running your show. And it's the same thing with, symptom suppressing diets. You will feel better for the time being, a lot of times because of cortisol and because of adrenaline. And then at that 3 or 6 month mark, you really start to see the breakdown of your body. And it's because that diet actually made your body go into a stress response, which made you feel better for a time. Where should one focus, and anything specific to avoid if your thyroid has been removed? Oh, okay. So if your thyroid has been removed, I hope that your doctor has you on both T4 and T3 medication. But same things, you want to continue to focus on the body, even more so get your stress response down, because when you don't have a thyroid, your body does have to compensate, absolutely. And so it's very important to keep stress low so that T4 to T3 conversion happens if you're taking that thyroid hormone. But it's so important to to talk to your doctor about that thyroid replacement therapy, and that's something that if you probably would have to be on for the rest of your life. Trying to conceive 8 months and no positive ovulation, watch your fertility, progesterone, and thyroid story, and already doing most. Would Vitex help, and when would I stop taking it if becoming pregnant? Vitex can help, absolutely. It can help you ovulate by working on the pituitary gland. It's very difficult in a trying to conceive situation. I do run or have you run like adequate levels of testing, because it's so important to see the whole picture. And like right here, like I couldn't even put it into bullet points. You have to make sure that your full thyroid panel is good and your thyroid levels are not just normal, but optimal. And then you have to make sure that you get your hormones tested, specifically progesterone, testosterone, and estrogen tested 5 to 7 days after ovulation. Then you need to make sure that prolactin is normal and LH and FSH are normal. Then you need to make sure that your environment is okay. Are you sleeping next to a Wi-Fi router or live next to a cell phone tower? Are you, constantly exposed to mold, whether it's at work or at home? Are you constantly cleaning with chemical-based cleaners? I could go on and on and on. And, I go through every single thing that could be an endocrine disruptor or a fertility disruptor. And usually when you start to comb through and you actually get the right test done, you begin to see like, oh, okay. So you really start to paint a picture. But, you got to get your stress hormones tested, cortisol, adrenaline, things like that. You want to make sure that you have adequate levels of B vitamins, specifically folate. Remember that folate is needed for DNA separation or cellular separation. When a baby is growing, those cells are constantly separating. And so the body will protect your future child from not being formed properly, especially if there are vitamins and nutrients that are missing or low. And so, we have to see infertility for what it is. It is a protection of both you and your future baby. And something is disrupting that process. Something is making the body feel like it is unsafe to conceive or to reproduce, whether that is something to protect you. Because remember, the minute that a conception happens, your body is no longer prioritizing you. Your body is completely prioritizing that baby the minute conception occurs, which will happen, within 15 minutes of having sex. And so at that point, your body knows that if you're not strong enough to handle prioritizing a small child, both you will suffer and the child will suffer. So I hope that makes sense. I try to be very I know that infertility is such a mental struggle and such an emotional journey as well. I've never personally been through it just because I haven't even tried. However, it's just I try to be sensitive, but I also know that it is there is such a physical stressor. But then on the other hand, I've been with a lot of women through their fertility journeys, and I find that becoming obsessed with their fertility and making that their ultimate goal in life actually makes the situation worse. Very often they're having such a difficult time conceiving because they're just obsessed with conceiving. They're tracking, they just cannot stop obsessing. They're in these Facebook groups and they're watching all these women that are in their TTC journey and they're conceiving, and they just feel so jealous or so hurt or in so much pain. And I'm like, that is not a state of reproduction. That is not a state of fertility. One of the most important things I do with my clients is have them leave their Facebook groups, stop obsessing over things, and really, really take a step back and really work on their mental and emotional health, which lowers and limits a lot of stress in their life. So make sure that emotional stress is not being overlooked. And also, make sure that you have gotten the right lab tests done, and they're not just in range, but they're in optimal ranges, because everybody is so different. And remember, lab ranges are an average of everyone that has come in and gotten lab tests done at that specific lab. And usually people that are getting labs run are not the healthiest of individuals. Hi, Lynn. I'm so excited to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I used to think that 2.5 TSH minute was low. I'm confused about all the thyroid hormone levels. Now my TSH is 2.18. Is that better? I still haven't gotten T3 tested. Thank you. Yeah, so TSH, they say that anything under 5 is optimal. However, that is just not true. You really want it between 1 and 2. So anytime remember that TSH is a hormone. It's not a thyroid hormone. TSH is the hormone that your brain or your pituitary gland uses to tell your thyroid that the body is under stress and you need to either raise metabolic rate or slow the metabolic rate. Anytime TSH is high, it's actually telling the thyroid to slow things down. Because when you're under stress, your body doesn't want to burn nutrients. It wants to store as many nutrients as possible. It wants to really be efficient and shut down any processes that are not necessary to conserve fuel under stress. And so when TSH is high, usually thyroid production is suppressed. And so optimal levels are between 1 and 2. However, remember that cortisol and adrenaline can suppress TSH. And so you always have to get your stress hormones checked when you get TSH checked, because a lot of people are like, well, I have my thyroid, my TSH is 2.5. And I'm like, but is your cortisol elevated? Because your TSH might even be higher and cortisol is suppressing it on a test. So that's why, again, TSH is really, I don't want to say it's useless, but it's pretty useless without the whole story. And so you do need to get T4 and T3 tested to really even understand what's going on with your thyroid. Until then, it's just kind of like you have no idea. The first month of supplementing progesterone, my skin was really good, but the next month I've had more spots. Will this even out? I also added dairy back in, so I'm not sure if that's the issue. Remember, like I said at the beginning of this live, progesterone does absolutely mobilize estrogen from the tissues. You begin to actually see a circulation of estrogen occur. When progesterone is low, you don't really have a lot of estrogen on that highway or in your bloodstream, right? Your body's storing it in the tissues where it gets stored. And so once progesterone runs the show, then you start to mobilize estrogen. You start to properly detoxify estrogen. So estrogen type symptoms can get worse. Also, you have to make sure that you are keeping stress low because estrogen is stressful. And so make sure you're detoxifying estrogens well. It could be dairy. It just could be inflammation. It's really hard to know, but just keep an eye on it. I always call it like there does tend to be, like, when women really switch their diet to a more pro-metabolic diet and they get progesterone levels adequate and thyroid levels adequate, they actually begin to see like a few cycles get almost worse, like more estrogeny, like they get sore breasts and clotty or heavier periods, or their periods, like they have one period that's really dark and like kind of like brown, or like that really deep red color, which is all almost estrogen. And so as long as the cycles are improving over time, remember it usually takes about 100 days to really see big changes, then okay, you're moving in the right direction. But sometimes it can get worse before it gets better. I want to try raw milk, but I'm worried about the risks. Do you heat it up before or freeze it? No, I'm drinking it right now. Raw. Scary. I honestly think driving in a car is more dangerous than drinking raw milk, but that's just me. But again, you have to kind of, weigh the pros and the cons. Remember that nothing is ever as it seems, and this like whenever there's like a mass fear, look at actually how many accounts and cases have actually occurred, and you'll find that usually things are blown out of proportion for political reasons or companies that need to make money, so it's one of those things where you do have to decide what's best for you, but there's nothing wrong with drinking pasteurized milk if you're afraid of raw. Why is everyone against condoms? What about disease versus pregnancy? Right. Yeah, I think that it's very important with, if you're having sex with someone that is not like a long-term partner, or you don't really know if they're telling you the truth, like if they've gotten tested or, how many sexual partners that they've had, then it is important to protect yourself, because I've ran into multiple women that, have lifelong struggles from, pelvic inflammatory disease or, just any type of venereal disease, and it does really wreak havoc on your life, and our reproductive organs are more sensitive, and so we do have to be more careful in that regard, because it can end up causing a lot of problems just long term. So condoms are important, especially if you really don't know your partner very well, or it's a new partner or something like that. Pregnancy is something to be worried about too if you don't want a child, but on the other hand, disease is something that is very real. I was on a holiday for a week and had some things I wouldn't normally. Does this mess up my healing for a long term? Not necessarily. I mean, you go on vacation and then you come back and you just get back to your regular life. I do like to take precautions, especially if I'm like forced to eat out. And I hate eating out because I know, like, I've worked in the restaurant business and the quality of the food is disgusting. Like, disgusting. Like, it makes me like literally want to throw up. Just like, they use chicken that's almost rotten, and like beef that's just like, on the brink of going bad. And it's just because, like, restaurants' goal is to make a profit off of you. They don't really care. Like, they're gonna give you the quality of food that makes sure that you don't get sick, but they're not gonna give you like high quality food ever, even if you eat at the most expensive restaurant on the planet, because remember, a business's goal is profit. And so, like, I always take precautions when I eat out, because I don't want to get parasites, which is very real, and I don't want to be exposed to those polyunsaturated fats as much as possible. So I always take activated charcoal after a restaurant meal, and I always take vitamin E to protect myself from the polyunsaturated fats as much as possible. I know, like, I personally don't choose to eat out a lot, but when you're traveling or when you are out and about, like, you kind of have no option. And so at that point, like, it's just good to take some extra precautions, especially during your healing journey. Like, you don't want anything to disrupt what you're trying to accomplish, but I wouldn't like stress about it or obsess about it or anything like that. Random question, but is there a side that is better to sleep on as far as digestion goes? That's a good question. A lot of times they'll say like lie on your right side to allow like the liver to kind of flow bile better. But at the end of the day, like sleeping on your back is best for you health-wise. I'm a horribly like bad habit sleeper. I sleep on my stomach and I constantly try to sleep on my back, and it's like a constant struggle. I've been like working on it actively because whenever you sleep on your stomach, your neck's kind of like this and your mouth breather. And even on your side, you can really mess things up back like spinal wise unless you like really do sleep perfectly on your side. But usually they say like the right side, but I think like honestly like whatever helps you sleep best is probably the best. Do you know what could cause fibromyalgia? Just got diagnosed with it and the doctor told me I will live with pain for the rest of my life. I eat an orange a day now. Is it okay that I eat it then OJ? So yeah, fibromyalgia and fibrosis is really caused by just severe stress and inflammation. Severe. The goal is, again, always focusing on what's going to lower inflammation, working on gut health, working on liver health. Oranges can be, the actual fiber in the orange can actually be irritating to the gut. And so, orange juice doesn't have any of the pulp that's going to be really like actually irritate the gut lining. So it is like, it's one of those things when you have severe gut issues or fibromyalgia or severe fibrosis, you kind of do have to take the extra steps to really, really focus on gut health for the time being. A lot of times being on a very low fiber diet and a very low starch diet can be very helpful to kind of get bacteria cleared as well. And then getting like a comprehensive gut analysis would be really beneficial. And if gut bacteria is bad, there are a few clients that have that I've had that had fibromyalgia that had really just severely imbalanced gut bacteria. They had both SIBO and H. pylori, that they actually took antibiotics and felt a ton better. Their symptoms greatly improved, and then they continued on. So sometimes antibiotics can actually be used therapeutically to really clear as much bacteria out of the gut as possible, because a lot of people are worried about antibiotics. They're like, oh my gosh, my gut bacteria. And I'm like, well, when your gut's so imbalanced, like your gut bacteria is probably causing more harm than good. They're creating so many endotoxins, so many toxins that are just inflaming the body. And so just clearing it out is better. And then continuing to clear it with the more natural antibiotics like raw carrots and mushrooms and things like that. But I think that when it comes to fibromyalgia, you want to look into gut health specifically, liver health, and then also just diet-wise and thyroid-wise, like what's going on with your stress hormones, what's going on with your thyroid. Like at that point, don't take someone's word for it that you're going to constantly have to live with pain forever, but at the same time, like it is going to take some time to really see results. But I think that they do give a lot of like over the counter, I want to say like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for fibromyalgia, and I love aspirin. I actually personally take aspirin every day for inflammation. Now, I'm not saying like that's a recommendation that I'm giving you, but you guys can definitely look into aspirin. It's very anti-inflammatory, and it doesn't work like an Advil or a Tylenol. It doesn't stress your liver out like those do. It's very different. Just because it's considered an NSAID doesn't mean that they work the same way. And so, if you're being prescribed like anti-inflammatories like Advil or Tylenol or ibuprofen, things like that, I would recommend like doing your research and looking into aspirin. But of course, like ask your doctor and make sure you do your own research and make the decision that works best for your body. This is never medical advice. I always want to make that a point, because remember, I'm trying to get you to be an advocate of your own health, point you in the right direction. But at the end of the day, you guys need to be your own master experimenters, and you're making your own decisions for your body. It's good to get into that habit. On what days should we test our hormones? Which hormones to test when you have PCOS, and when to do it if you have an irregular cycle? Yeah, so you do need to track ovulation, because women with PCOS do eventually ovulate, and it's best to test your hormones 5 to 7 days after ovulation. You definitely want to get your sex hormones tested, progesterone, estradiol or estrogen, and testosterone. You also want to get stress hormones tested, cortisol, DHEA, and prolactin. You want to get PTH or parathyroid hormone tested, especially if you have hair loss. That can cause decalcification of the bones and the hair. You want to make sure you're getting a full thyroid panel, TSH, T4, T3, free T3, free T4, reverse T3, and antibodies. And then you want to do like blood sugar, like hemoglobin A1C, insulin, oral glucose tolerance test, that kind of thing. That's going to give you a good baseline. However, remember guys, that PCOS is so specific to the person, and what your symptoms are way more important than what just having PCOS. You sometimes, everyone has different symptoms, and so you kind of have to chase different rabbit holes. Some people have severe inflammation and gut issues, which should be focused on, and some people have more stress issues and like hormonal imbalances. And so you kind of need to take where you're at and go from there. Any tips or advice to heal anal fissures? Yeah, so don't strain ever. Use a squatty potty always. You should never poop in a seated position for your pelvic floor health, please, ladies. Always use a squatty potty or put books underneath your feet or something like that. You should always be squatting. Humans are meant to squat when they poop. It doesn't damage the pelvic floor, and it actually opens up the pelvic floor. When you're seated, like seated on the throne, your rectum is squeezed like this, and so you do have to strain to push poop out. And I know this is like, real talk, but here's the deal, guys. If you want to wreck your pelvic floor and have like loose vaginal walls, that's how you poop. If you want to have a strong pelvic floor and you want to have full bowel movements, you need to be in a squatting position, and so squatty potty can be very helpful. That's the first thing. And then making sure your stools are loose and not very hard or bulky. That is really important. Like aloe vera can be used just for the time being while you heal. Aloe vera can be helpful. Also, don't use toilet paper, anything dry. It's very irritating. So you want to use like wipes. I like water wipes. They're made for babies, but obviously you can use them on your butt too. It's just grapefruit seed extract and water, so they're really, really gentle. Or like use a bidet. You want to just use something wet that's very gentle. And then vitamin E can actually be very helpful, like applied, helps the skin heal and like regain elasticity. Olive oil can also be helpful. And then, you do need to ask yourself, did you have, like if you have children, did you have an episiotomy? Episiotomies, when they cut you, they are really slicing a muscle and not letting it tear in the way that it would naturally tear. And so you do cause damage and scar tissue to occur. And that's something you can look into if you suffer from recurring anal fissures. It's really good to actually go to a pelvic floor physio and make sure they'll actually stick fingers in, and they'll actually check out your pelvic floor for you physically and tell you what's going on. They can also feel scar tissue, and sometimes the scar tissue can be so bad and so hard, it healed wrong, that it can actually cause you to have to strain. And so actual manual massage of the perineum can actually break up that scar tissue. Have your partner take olive oil and actually just massage that, or you can do it yourself. And it actually is meant to like soften the skin, break up scar tissue, work those muscles. Just like any other muscle needs to be worked, so does that, especially if it was like healing. And so for women that have gotten episiotomies very recently, make sure you're massaging that area. Women that are about to birth, make sure you're massaging that area. And if you've, gotten episiotomy in the past and you didn't realize that it might heal wrong, just look into it and make sure that there's no scar buildup. It's not always the case. It's not something you want to like stress about, like, oh no, I got an episiotomy. Like, women got to do what women got to do. However, it is something to be aware of. I think a lot of women aren't really aware of what needs to happen for preparation before birth and preparation after birth. That's something that I definitely want to talk about more. I'm just, prioritizing hormones of PCOS right now, but pregnancy is something I'm like really passionate about, just because I think that like birth should be like a really empowering experience and like an ability to learn your body in a completely different way and like come out on the other side feeling like a goddess. Like, look at what I just did. Like, I created human life. And I think it's kind of treated like a tumor removal in our culture. Like, let's just remove this tumor, and women's bodies aren't really respected or honored in the process. and it's just kind of, it ends up being to our own detriment. So, just talking about things like how to strengthen your core and your pelvic floor before a birth, and then afterwards, things to be aware of, like on a physical level, softening your cervix, softening your perineum, just so you're preparing yourself for birth, which are all very important things. Do you recommend taking evening primrose oil to help with fertility? Not really. You guys know that I'm like not a big fan of PUFAs, polyunsaturated fats, and I don't think they're essential, and I think they can be inflammatory. So, personally, no, but of course, like some people see benefits with it and some people do like it. So again, it's like supplements are one of those things where it's very relative to the person, and you kind of just have to figure that out for yourself if it works or not. My doctor wants to run a glucose tolerance test, and she asked me to eat a Western diet before rather than how I eat now. It doesn't make much sense to me to do so. What do you recommend? Well, I mean, you want to actually see how you're tolerating glucose. I wouldn't eat like a Western diet necessarily, but you do need to make sure, like if she's not giving you that blood glucose solution, that sugar solution, then you do need to make sure you're consuming a ton of glucose before to see if your body's actually clearing that glucose and letting it enter into the cell. It's like one of those things where if you're actually trying to see if you're insulin resistant, you need to actually see if you can clear. I always tell women, I'm like, your goal metabolically is if you chugged a big gulp, you would clear that glucose. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to go chug a big gulp, but I am saying that a properly functioning metabolism would pick up all that sugar and burn it. You know what I mean? It should not sit around in your system. And we see people that are on chronically low carb diets become hepatically insulin resistant, meaning that they're physiologically now insulin resistant because they force their liver cells to burn fat instead of glucose, causing their livers themselves to become insulin resistant. And so many times long-term low carb diets can actually cause insulin resistance. And so to really see that, you do have to drink some kind of sugar beforehand to see. But I don't think that you should obviously listen to your doctor, but I'm like, it doesn't make much sense to me to completely like a standard American diet if that's not how you're eating and you wouldn't eat that way again. You know what I mean? Like I would eat like pretty commonly like you normally do, and then drink glucose to see how your normal regular diet that you consume affects how you tolerate glucose. But yeah, usually people on long-term like low carb paleo or keto diets have a horrible glucose tolerance, like horrible. It's actually like, it makes me sick seeing like how insulin resistant people make themselves, myself included. I made that mistake too, and I had to like completely heal for like a year. Any tips on constipation? I've been following your dietary protocol and have really limited greens, and now I seem to be constipated. Yeah, so a lot of people think that like if they are reliant on greens to go to the bathroom, that they're not constipated. And I'm like, if you need fiber or cellulose to go poop, you're still constipated. If you rely upon fiber to poop, there's a problem. Your body should do peristalsis, meaning it should move stool through your digestion regardless of what you consume. If you have to consume fiber to move your poop, there's a prob. So, and but you can absolutely use fibers, cooked. You don't have to eat less greens, just cook them and eat greens cooked. And then I really like raw carrots for helping with constipation. Bamboo shoots are a great fiber. Well-cooked mushrooms are a really good fiber. And psyllium husk can be helpful in some cases if you're trying to get peristalsis to return. But remember, your goal is actually to tonify the bowel. But yeah, I mean, you shouldn't be constipated, and you don't have to limit your greens. Like, whenever I talk about certain things, you guys, they're not rules. Ever do I ever say a rule. I always say you need to do what works for you. However, if you're still experiencing problems, what you're doing is not working for you. However, that doesn't mean like cut out greens completely and stop yourself up like a waste dump. You know what I mean? Just maybe switch from raw greens to a plethora of cooked greens, or make sure you're, replacing that fiber with a more gentle fiber, because pooping is very important. What do you think? And remember, you guys, I do want to say a point. We are so used to entrusting other people with our bodies. Stop doing that. Even me. Do not entrust your body to anyone but yourself. And if we keep blindly saying, okay, this person said this, and you take it out of context and then you apply it to your life and it's not working for you, don't keep doing it. Do what works for you and make sure that you're constantly shifting and tweaking things by your own prerogative. Never, ever, ever, ever implement something blanketly just because somebody else said it. Now, when I hear somebody say, oh, I don't eat greens because they irritate my gut, I like to cook my greens, I would say, I'm going to try that out for a week and see if that helps me because I haven't been feeling that great. I'm going to try that. But I don't say like, oh, because somebody said to do this, I'm going to do this no matter what. And you're like stopping up, like you're so constipated and you're like, I feel so sick, but she said don't eat greens. You know what I mean? Like, I want you guys to truly be your own health advocates and don't take anyone's word for it, not even mine. Nobody. You are your own best healer, and that is how you are going to find what works for you and find your sweet spot with nutrition, is continuously experimenting until you find what works well for you. I hope that makes sense. I just don't want you guys to constantly blindly follow other people, including myself, and put yourself at risk. What do you think about using pregnenolone? I have PCOS and progesterone. Is fat healthy when estrogen dominance? Should we starve the estrogen from the fat tissue? Okay, so this is a multitude of questions. What do you think about using pregnenolone? I love pregnenolone. I think it can be really beneficial, especially when people have very stress-based conditions. It is a very youth-stimulating hormone. It can regenerate the beta cells in the pancreas. It's just very, very beneficial. Now, with that being said, whenever I say something is beneficial, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, give me all the pregnenolone. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. If you are going to experiment with a hormone, it must be done very conservatively and very mindfully. Never ever take, even if it's a natural substance, never ever take things lightly. They should always be taken very seriously, and especially hormones. And so pregnenolone is something that is worth experimenting with, in my opinion. However, it must be done very, very carefully. And then when it comes to PCOS and progesterone, I have PCOS and progesterone. And then is fat healthy with estrogen dominance? Remember, it's the type of fats you're consuming, you guys. Saturated fats are fine for estrogen dominance and can actually really heal the gut. But polyunsaturated fats are awful for estrogen dominance because they're so estrogenic and anti-thyroid. And so it's one of those things where, it's not about fats themselves, it's about what fats are you consuming. Should we starve the estrogen from the fat tissue? That doesn't necessarily make any sense. You don't starve estrogen. You want to increase your metabolic rate so your body's starting to open up fat cells on its own volition. You don't want to starve yourself so that your body has to open up fat cells under duress. There's two types of weight loss. There's weight loss that's caused by adrenaline, and then there's weight loss that's caused by upping your metabolic rate so that your body starts to burn through stored fuel at its own volition. I mean, it opens up fat cells as it deems necessary and as it can handle, because there's lots of toxins stored in the fat cells, specifically estrogens. And so, you want to make sure that your body's doing that of its own volition and not under duress. And so, fat's important for creating hormones, but saturated fats are where it's at. My specific favorites for both being precursors to hormones and also for very, very important gut healing are coconut oil, grass-fed butter, ghee, and beef tallow, grass-fed beef tallow. Those four are like the magic for when it comes to hormonal healing, when it comes to fats. How to start taking chlorophyll, dosage, and regularity. Yeah, I mean, I just, you guys have to understand, like, when I started doing my own health journey, like, I just started things and I experimented until I found what works, and I want you guys to do the same. So chlorophyll is one of those things where it can be pretty potent, so you don't want to be like, I'm gonna dump like half my bottle in and just like detox my liver. You're gonna feel like Sharky. So I would recommend starting with maybe a tablespoon or so and working up to that. Daily is usually one of, daily consistency is where it's at when it comes to actually seeing if something's gonna work for you or not. But yeah, chlorophyll is awesome. And I usually start with what it says on the bottle and then work my way up from there. I want to start using progesterone cream. How much should I use and on what days? That is on you. You need to do your own research and you need to decide what's right for you. Yeah, I always say start on the most conservative level as possible. You can always work up, but once you go too much, you can't work your way down. And once those symptoms start, you can't really get rid of them. And so it's best to start conservative. But when it comes to supplementing hormones, you guys, I leave that completely on your plate because you need to be informed. I cannot inform somebody of all the experience that I've had of utilizing progesterone. I have had to learn my own body and supplement hormones on myself and experiment. And I cannot teach someone that. That has to be self-taught and that has to be self-experimented. And so it's so important to both do your own research, understand the risks, search forums, Reddit, Amazon reviews, whatever you need, really learn things before you just blindly start supplementing hormones. Sorry if you've already talked about this, but what about A1 casein and dairy regarding inflammation? Sometimes it could be easier digested, but at the end of the day, you know, most healthy bodies can digest A1, A2, doesn't really matter if you're a healthy individual. But yeah, some people find that A2 milk is easier digested, specifically like raw, or goat's milk or sheep's milk or something like that, especially when they're first tying dairy back in. But my goal is always like, I want a robust digestive system that I don't have to like worry about like, oh my God, am I like consuming A1 dairy or like A2 dairy? Like that's just like exhausting to me. But yeah, I mean, if you feel better eating A2 dairy, eat A2 dairy. You know what I mean? Like, don't, and if you don't, then you don't, you know? It's like one of those things where it's just kind of like whatever it is. Is overly oily, greasy hair linked to hormonal imbalance? Use InnerSense products, tried ACV, have to wash every other day. Yeah, so usually high DHEA or high testosterone due to stress and inflammation can cause excessively oily skin. Also, prolactin can also cause very oily hair and skin. So if you like constantly struggle with oily hair and skin and you don't have high testosterone levels and you don't have high DHEA levels, remember that testosterone and DHEA are not the problem. Your body's raising those to protect your body from stress, cortisol, adrenaline, and prolactin. And so it's important to see why the body's raising those hormone levels. And yeah, their side effects are like, you know, maybe some acne or some oily skin or some oily scalp, but you have to see those symptoms for what they are. Your body's just compensating to protect your vital organs, you know, and so I would look into stress hormones for sure. And it can be topical. You know, the health of your scalp is really reliant upon the health of your body as a whole, just because the hair follicles and the scalp are very sensitive to stressors and to hormonal imbalances and to nutrient deficiencies. And so, you know, it's important to start with the stress hormones, but then you want to move to, what products are you actually using? Are they truly natural, or are they still stripping the hair of their natural oil, making it produce more oil? I use very clay-based products. I don't use lathering products for that very reason. I get very oily hair as well when I strip my hair of the natural oils in it. And so when I use more natural products like bentonite clay or Morocco method, which is a clay-based shampoo system, it tends to be, I tend to get less oily. And then I also see shifts in my cycle. So when I have progesterone in the picture, I do not get as oily a scalp as the first half of my cycle. Is high fasting insulin a sign of insulin resistance, even though the OGTT was okay? Thank you. No, you guys. So insulin is not just for letting sugar into the cells. It also retains minerals. Many people that are overhydrating themselves or hyperhydrating have super elevated insulin. Many people that are sodium deficient or magnesium deficient or calcium deficient or potassium deficient, they also have super elevated insulin, because insulin has other jobs besides letting glucose into the cell. And if your body is letting glucose into the cell well, then look to other reasons why insulin could be high. Can healing PCOS stop the excess hair growth, or is it permanent? That is something that I kind of answered at the beginning of this live. I pretty much said that it's hard to know. But and in healing, PCOS doesn't really occur. It's more reversal of the metabolic damage that is caused by PCOS. You know, you just have to see PCOS for what it is. It's an advanced metabolic dysregulation that has occurred over time. And so reversing that metabolic dysregulation, usually you see symptoms of your symptoms improve over time. But, you know, it's hard to know. Some women see complete hair growth. You know, I still have a little mustachy, you know, and a little hair growth here and there between my breasts or like beneath my belly button, but it's nothing that can't be handled. And I used to have thick, dark hair growing on my legs, all up my inner thighs. I had pretty bad, like, I don't want to say like I had horrible hirsutism. I know women have it worse. I've always been more like a peach fuzzy type of gal, but my peach fuzz started to turn darker and darker and darker, and it has gotten a lot better. And when I'm under stress, I still tend to see like I get thicker, coarser hairs pop up here and there. Update on Fully Nourished, please. Yes, so I will, Instagram's cutting me off like always, so I've been live for an hour, so I'm gonna do an update on Fully Nourished. I see Shelby asked, can you explain the science behind a pill bleed? So I'll start with those, and then if I didn't get to the rest of your questions, just join me live again, and I will answer them there. Thank you guys, and I'll see you in a second.